Hi folks, today we're talking about reciprocal trig ratios. So reciprocal means that you flip top and bottom. So there are three of them because there are three primary trig ratios. Okay, we first start with the reciprocal of the sine ratio. So the reciprocal of the sine ratio is the cosecant of theta. Okay, cosecant is denoted just CSC. And it means 1 over sine theta. So therefore it means the hypotenuse over opposite. Because 1 over opposite over hypotenuse is the same thing as saying 1 times hypotenuse over opposite. Right? You're just flipping and multiplying as you would with fractions. So it's basically you're just flipping top and bottom. Now the secant ratio is the reciprocal of cos. So secant theta is 1 over cos theta. Okay? A little memory trick I like to use is that the one that starts with C goes with the one that starts with S. The one that starts with S goes with the one that starts with C. So the C's and the S's don't go together. Just a way of memorizing that. Okay, and then tangent has a reciprocal of cotangent. So it's adjacent over opposite. So knowing all of this, I'd like you to actually pause the video right now and attempt this investigate on your own. Okay? I'm going to take it up, but right now just pause and do it on your own. Okay. So you should have gotten then from last class that the exact value of sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. So that means that you would predict the cosecant of 30 degrees is 2, because 1 over 2, when you flip top and bottom, you get 2 over 1. So if you use your calculator, you find sine 30 degrees, and then you press the reciprocal key, and that should confirm that it is in fact 2. Okay, so for cos 60, it's originally 1/2, so secant 60 should be 2. Tan 30 degrees is 1 over root 3, and cotangent of 30 degrees then is just root 3. So you might not, when you use the calculator, it won't give you root 3, it'll give you a decimal. But if you check that decimal and you check root 3, that should be the same number. So then when you fill this out, okay, you fill in the sine values that we learned last class. And then for the cosecant, you do you flip top and bottom, okay, to get the cosecant. So cosecant of 0 is undefined because this is 0. So if you do 1 divided by 0, you can't do that, okay? 1 over 2 switches to 2, 1 over root 2 to root 2, root 3 over 2 is now 2 over root 3, and 1 is still 1 because it's just 1 over 1 or 1 over 1, okay? You could do the same thing with cos to secant. And again, 0 becomes undefined. And with tangent to cotangent. Now notice that undefined does not, the reciprocal of undefined is not undefined, it's 0. Okay, so if you're finding the reciprocal of 0, it's undefined. If you're finding the reciprocal of undefined, then it's 0. Okay, so hopefully you understand this is all just based on these initial definitions. That's how we figured out the rest of this combined with yesterday's note. So now we just have 2 examples using this, okay? So consider a right triangle. You can label your right triangle as I did. Okay? So first we want to find the 6 trig ratios for angle A. Okay, so sine A, okay, so we're referring to this angle here. Opposite over hypotenuse is 4 over 5. Cos of A, adjacent over hypotenuse, so 3 over 5. And tan A, opposite over adjacent, 4 over 3. Okay, so now we find the other 3 reciprocal ratios. So we have cosecant of A, which is just the reciprocal of sine. So that would be 5 over 4. The secant of A is 5 over 3. And then the cotangent of A is 3 over 4. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing for angle B. So pause the video and do it on your own, and then check to make sure you did it right. So angle B, sine of B is 3/5. So then cosecant of B is 5/3. Cos of B is 4/5. So secant of B is 5/4. Tangent of B is 3/4. So cotangent of B is 4/3. And there you have it. Okay? All right, one more example. Oh, sorry, two more examples. So determine the angle given the reciprocal. So each angle is in the first quadrant. Okay, first quadrant. Determine the measure of each angle to the nearest degree. So cosecant of A can be changed to, so cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So that means the sine of A is this reciprocal of this. So that means that the sine of A is 1/8. So to find what A is, we just take the inverse sine of 1/8. Okay, we can't use cosecant A in our calculator because there's no button for that. So when you do that, you get A is approximately 7.2 degrees. Okay? Try these two now, knowing how I did A. Okay, so if secant B is 5/2, then that means the cos of B is 2/5. So B is just the inverse cos of 2/5, which is about 66 degrees. Cotangent C is 5/16. That means the tan of C is 16/5. So C is the inverse tan of 16/5. So it's about 73 degrees. Okay? So if they give you a reciprocal trig ratio, you need to change it back to one of the primary trig ratios, and you do that by just flipping top and bottom. So those were all just in the first quadrant, so we were only looking at those acute angles. But what if we're looking at the whole Cartesian plane? So determine two angles between 0 and 360 that have a cosecant of -2. Okay, so we have cosecant theta equals -2. Okay, so we need to change this to a primary trig ratio. So cosecant is the inverse of sine. So we have a sine theta then of -1/2. So we draw our Cartesian plane. So now this question is exactly like what we have done in previous days. So you should be able to do the rest of this without me. So if you'd like to pause and try that, that would be excellent. That's good practice for you. So sine is negative in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4, either using the cast rule or logic that sine is represented by y, and that's where y is negative. Okay? So that means we have theta 1 is there, and theta 2 is there. Because they have the same sine ratio, they're going to share a related acute angle. So we label that. There's beta, here's beta. Great. Okay, so we find beta first using our calculator. So beta is the inverse sine of 1/2. Notice again, I'm doing positive 1/2 because beta is always acute. So you should recognize that from a special triangle. Okay, the one that has 30 up here, 60 down here. This was 2, this is 1, and this is root 3. So which one of these has a sine of 1/2? Well, 30 degrees does, okay, because it has a sine of 1/2. So beta is equal to 30 degrees, okay? Therefore, theta 1 is equal to 180 plus 30, so 210 degrees. And theta 2 is equal to 360 minus 30, so 330 degrees. Okay, so again, you start with the cosecant. To solve that, you have to turn it into a primary trig ratio. All right. Then you look at the negative sign. It's sine and it's negative. You use that piece of information to tell you which quadrants to draw the terminal arms. Okay, and then you use the inverse trig ratio, so the inverse here, to find beta. And then you go back to your picture and use where they are with beta to come up with the principal angles. So that is reciprocal trig ratios. It just basically is adding this extra step here. That's the biggest difference. So if you're solid on the knowledge from previous days, this shouldn't be too much of an addition for you, hopefully. If it's from here on that you're still confused, you should go back and watch some of the previous videos. So thanks for watching, and I hope you learned lots.